guys. I think that's probably the most likely option to go for on those first two. But a third option they could go with the front office would be looking at drafting Geno Smith with the third pick in the draft. Geno Smith is the highest rated quarterback coming into this year's draft, probably the best of this year's draft class. If you haven't read my full analysis of both Smith and the rest of this year's class, go now to UKEndZone.com. Not being boastful or anything, it really is a good read if you don't know too much about the inner workings of the quarterbacks and that, and you just listen to the experts. Go and have a read, turn on the tapes that are put up there, have a little look for yourself. Gonna post the game later this week called Draft Day Quarterback Bingo for you to get involved with, so go and have a read of that. As for drafting Geno Smith with the third pick, I think the Raider organisation will be completely reinvigorated. You know, all first round quarterbacks do reinvigorate a franchise. Just got to look back in history and see the optimism that comes with drafting a quarterback in the first round. But, you know, the Raiders have been burnt before by picking a quarterback at the top of the draft. Look back, Jamarcus Russell, making a comeback good one. But it is a gamble. It's a gamble I think they might take. I think they might weigh both of them up, and I think they want to start getting arses back on seats in that stadium. It's a huge stadium when it's empty. It just looks daunting for their own players. It's almost embarrassing. So to get that organisation gathering some momentum, I think it's a gamble the front office will weigh up, and I think the owner will come down them and say, draft Geno Smith with the third pick. There is a fourth option that I've been looking at. I'm not sure if the Raider organisation will take it, but if I was them, it's definitely the option I'd go for. Whether their front office will sit down and discuss it, I'm not too sure. I am well prepared for the backlash here, but if I am the Raiders, I'd be sounding out now and I'd go and make an offer to Timothy Richard Tebow for when he will eventually hit free agency. The Jets will be able to dump him off, which in my opinion is more fool them when you look at Mark Sanchez. Whether you think of Tebow as a man, a quarterback, or a general football player, we all know that Tim Tebow guarantees three things: hype, effort, and leadership. For me, the Oakland Raiders have been under the radar now for far too long. They simply just seem to accept mediocrity and let it become the norm. That old saying, those pictures of Al Davis of just win, they seem to be long gone. In one move, the Raiders could completely reverse all of that. I can guarantee now that if the Raiders picked up Tebow, he'd work A, harder than anyone on their roster, B, win more than 4 games next year, which is all they won this year, and display much more ability than Terrell Pryor. If you buy into it the way the Broncos did, you stack your roster with 5 or 6 running backs or fullbacks, you're going to need that to split the running load. If you run the ball the majority of the time, and with Tebow taking the odd shot downfield, because he does have that arm strength down the field, he can drive the ball down the field, it is proven that you will win games, and that is all you need to do in the NFL is win games. As with the other options, you can then use that pick at the top of the draft to redefine and reinvigorate that shocking defense, whether that be an edge rusher in a Bjorn Werner or to crush the pocket from the middle with a Floyd or a Starler Tulai. And looking at this Tebow deal, if you look at it logically, you could only sign him to a 1-year deal. You wouldn't need to sign him to any more than that. He wouldn't cost too much. He's desperate for another shot as an NFL starting quarterback. You'd get guaranteed national press attention again, whether you think that's good or bad. I doubt it'd be as hyped as it was when he first moved to the Jets, but you'd get the Raiders back on primetime football. And if it fails, let's look at it. You'll be back at the top of the draft next year. You'll be able to maybe pick up a better quarterback with a better class. You know, the talk of Johnny Manziel might be coming out just after his junior year. There'll be better class. So all in all, I think going for Tebow is definitely the best shot here. So here we are, halfway through the first UKEndZone football programme. If you're enjoying it so far and you stick with us through to the end of this first show, as I mentioned, the promo next week, which will come up just after this, sort of an insight into UKEndZone. We'll be getting guests on and stuff next week, but for now, let's power on through with the AFC West. We've got the Chargers and the Broncos to come. Now, I will profess that I'm not a Charger expert. I don't follow too many of their games. I find them a bit of an enigma in the NFL. They're clearly a talented team. They have that franchise quarterback people look for. And last year, they had a division in which they were basically gifted 4 games to each with the Chiefs and the Raiders. But for me, the Chargers again continue to underperform again and again. Former GM AJ Smith came under heavy criticism, and I think rightly so last year. He allowed too many top-end players to leave and didn't replace them properly. He was replaced this off-season with former Colts Vice President of Football Operations Tom Telesco. Telesco was part of that front office that was responsible for turning the Colts from the worst team in the league to a playoff team, similar to what I can see the Chiefs doing this year. So for me, Telesco's first job is to restore a very poor offensive line. I think he's got to pick up the best offensive lineman that falls to him at 11 in the draft. I can see the way some draft boards are shaping up now. I had Chance Warmack down as going, I think, 3rd overall in my mock draft, but now talk of him falling and sliding down draft boards, he could potentially land them at 11. There's been some talk this week that Telesco might look to trade up to go and get Luke Jokel. I can't see that happening. I think he's got to wait, stockpile his picks, see who's at 11, either trade down and get more picks or draft the best offensive lineman on the board. The Chargers also replaced long-term head coach North Turner this off-season. He's highly regarded as one of those top offensive minds within the league. It brought to an end that Turner-Rivers relationship that had been the bedrock of the Chargers' mediocre mild success over the past few years. The Chargers replaced Turner with Mike McCoy. He was probably the hottest candidate on the coaching carousel this off-season. I think they've made a fantastic snag in picking up McCoy. He was the former Broncos offensive coordinator. You just have to look back at McCoy's past couple of years to see his track record. With John Fox in Denver, McCoy was responsible for helping turn the Broncos around. They had that miserable start at the start of the 2011 season when they had Kyle Orton at quarterback. They then went from that transition to a team that was basically run only under Tim Tebow. McCoy helped facilitate that. He helped put together those game plans that, though they were ugly at times, they won football games. He helped them win that famous game on the road at Heinz Field where Tebow hits that bomb to Thomas over the middle. I think it's clear to all to see, as with bringing Peyton Manning in this year, this prototypical quarterback, he completely again changed the system, was able to redevelop it to allow Peyton to get back to those Hall of Fame MVP numbers. It's clear to see for me that McCoy builds his systems around the quarterback at his disposal. He doesn't have a system, stick to it, that he's going to drop in on San Diego. He's going to evaluate his guys, in particular the quarterback. And, that's going to be music to the ears of Philip Rivers. Okay, so we move on to the last team in the AFC West, but certainly not the least. The Denver Broncos are heading into this 2013 season as one of the main contenders to be playing in New York come January time. The Broncos are considered widely as the shoo-in for the AFC West, and I'm not going to disagree with that premise. On the surface of it, they're so far ahead of their divisional rivals, it's bordering on scary. But under the surface, I've got to say there are some problems with the Broncos, and we'll take a look at them now. The first concern for Broncos fans and the Broncos front office will be their superstar quarterback, Peyton Manning. Manning had a stunning 2012 return, we all know. After that entire year out with the severe neck injury, most people didn't expect Manning to come back anywhere near the player he was, but he lit it up at mile high, he put up those MVP numbers. But heading into 2013, Peyton again for me is a real concern. Just look at his playoff record. It's in one word, in my opinion. You can sum it all up. It's pathetic. For me, that's the only word I can really use to describe Manning's endeavours in the postseason. They've just been so poor. He's got 11 losses on his resume in the postseason. That's side with just one other player, and that's his employer. It's a proved fact in the National Football League. Quarterbacks age 37 don't win the big one. John Elway, the aforementioned employer, is the eldest quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, and let's face it, this Broncos team isn't a patch on those of Elway's generation. I don't want to be too critical of Peyton, he's a hero of mine, but for all his talents, in my opinion, he should have won more than one ring by now, especially considering his little brother Eli's got 2. I can't see the Broncos going on to win it all this year, but I definitely think they'll run away with the AFC West. I think they'll be a 12-4, 11-5 team. The other major concern for the Broncos comes on the other side of the ball. It's their secondary at the defensive level. The Broncos are pretty much nailed on, I think, to draft on defense, and it'll probably be a defensive back if a guy of that value falls to them. After watching that game, the divisional round again the other week, when you see Flacco's 3rd and 4th bomb fly over the top to Torrey Smith, John Elway must have been smacking his head, and his mind must have been made up then that they'd be going to DB. Now, they could look at doing that in free agency, as already mentioned. There's lots of guys out there you could go for. They have some character issues, possibly money issues, but Aqib Talib can shut down one side of the field. Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie can be a good second option. Nnamdi Asomugha widely expected to get cut by the Eagles, as we tweeted earlier this week. So there are options there. I think with their way their cap set up and everything, I think they'll look at the draft. Potential to move up to maybe 7 or 6 if someone like Dean Milliner from the Crimson Tide hasn't been taken yet. Then they might move up and go and get him or Xavier Rhodes, someone like that. So there's options out there for the Broncos to address that secondary. That's all I can say on that matter. Well, that's it for the AFC West. I didn't cover the Chargers and Broncos much. I'm not that clued up on them. I haven't delved into the Chargers roster especially. I will be doing a
more extensive one on them. If you want to get more information on the Broncos and a view from a fan, there's an absolutely fantastic article on UKEndZone.com